In case you missed it, here's a Sports Animal Rewind. Our Eye on the SEC is brought to you by Miller Eye Care and Optical, 694-2622.
We bring in from Gig'em 247. That's GIGEM 247, the Texas A&M team side on the 24/7 Sports Network, covering the Texas A&M Aggies, who started spring practice Saturday. Aubrey Bloom joins us here on the new Sentinel Sports page. Hey, Aubrey, Vince, and Brendan. How you doing this morning, Aubrey?
Pretty good. How are you guys?
We're good. Hey, we appreciate you coming on with us and talking a few minutes Texas A&M football. What do you think of the all-access piece that ESPN did on Johnny Manziel? Did you get a chance to catch that? What did you think of that little piece by ESPN?
Yeah, I did see it. I thought it was kind of funny because they didn't really get much access. You know, they showed him going into the film room but not actually doing any film work, and they showed him in the coach's office but not talking to any coaches. So A&M football is pretty careful about what they put on TV, so I thought that part was pretty funny.
How have you reflected, Aubrey, on how different the life is in College Station, covering that program, the image of the program, going into this season as opposed to all the questions of going into the SEC it had last year at this point?
Yeah, it's two different worlds. You know, last year at this time at spring practice, there'd be about 8 to 10 members of the local media there every day. And yesterday, because Johnny was speaking at the post-practice press conference, there's probably 20, 25 people gathered around. It was hard to even get a camera angle on him. So it's, a whole different world than what it was last year, even for the media.
Kevin Sumlin has said, hey, I'm willing to have the problem of wondering how to manage the reigning Heisman Trophy winner. That's a good problem to have. But what is the biggest concern with Johnny football coming into this year? Is it off the field? Is it managing him and keeping him healthy on the field? What's the biggest question with Johnny football and this football team from his standpoint?
I think the biggest question for him is just getting better as a passer. You know, last year there were teams that shut him down as a rusher like LSU did, and A&M didn't really have a good answer for that. You know, it only happened really once because they played Florida so early, it's hard to include that one. But if they're going to win a national championship, which is what a lot of people think they have a chance to do, he is going to have to get better as a pocket passer than he was last season. So I think that's probably the biggest concern, is seeing him make some tough throws this spring.
We're previewing Texas A&M spring football, which started on Saturday with Aubrey Bloom from Gig'em 247, the Texas A&M team site on the 24/7 Sports Network. That's at Gig'em 247 on Twitter. Also at Aubrey Bloom 247 if you want to follow him on Twitter. So how does Kevin Sumlin manage Johnny football during spring practice? As he limits snaps, how does he handle him this spring?
Yeah, I think it's going to be full go. There's 2 new offensive linemen in the mix this year, and also he's got basically entirely new receiving core that he's got to work with and find a rhythm with. The way he plays, it's hard not only to defend him, but it's real hard to block for him because he can take off at any time, and it's also hard to be a receiver for him because at any moment you could become a receiver or a blocker or a receiver again, we've seen at times. So, you know, those new guys need to get that rhythm with him, so I think he's going to get as many reps as he can get.
Aubrey, as you well know, it's a huge class, a 2013 signing class for Texas A&M, but it's also a huge early enroll group too that's already in camp. I think 9 of the 32 already in camp, and one of them Tennessee fans are very familiar with, and he was a freshman at Tennessee and tied in Cameron Clear. What have you seen from Cameron Clear at Texas A&M to this point?
Well, they haven't put on pads yet, so all we've seen him is in helmets and jerseys and that kind of thing. But what I have seen is an absolutely massive person. This guy is huge. And a lot of Aggie fans thought he could come in potentially as an offensive tackle, but having seen him, the first few practices, he's definitely going to play tight end at A&M. And he moves well for a guy his size, and he's a guy the coaching staff really likes. They've been raving about him, ever since he got on campus, about being able to use him out of the backfield as a blocker and the slot in the passing game and on the end of the line in short yardage and things like that. So, he's a guy that the coaching staff is really excited about.
Aubrey Bloom from Gig'em 247, part of the 24/7 Sports Network, joining us. What are some of the other questions about this football team that you'd like the answers to when you get out of spring?
Well, the biggest question they have is one that can't be answered in the spring probably, and that's their defensive front seven. You know, right now they've got a converted wide receiver in the two deep at linebacker. All three linebackers are new right now because of some injuries, and all four defensive linemen are new because of injuries from how they ended the season last year. So that's the huge question. You know, in every spring scrimmage, I'll look for the offense at A&M just to decimate the defense because of how much further along they're going to be. So if they can get any sort of production out of the front seven in spring, that'll go a huge way to making people feel a little bit better going into the fall.
Aubrey Bloom on with us talking Texas A&M spring football. Started spring practice on Saturday. Aubrey's had a chance to see him a couple times. And Vince Ferrara, along with Brendan Quinn, who is covering Texas and Tennessee and Auburn tonight in hoops. Brendan?
Yeah, Aubrey, you mentioned all the attention around Johnny Manziel, I guess from the media and just that spotlight now. But compared to last year when the first year as SEC, and that is what I imagine was the overwhelming storyline. Now as a second year, entering the second year as an SEC team, do you see any differences? Is it more comfortable, or just at least they don't have to answer that question over and over and over again?
Yeah, you know, it's kind of funny. Last year, a lot of people didn't even think that A&M could compete in the SEC, and now the question is, can A&M win the SEC? Mm-hmm. And that's a different question than one they're having to deal with this year. You know, that's a different world from, you know, just a year ago, not even sure that they could go 500 overall, much less in the league. And then now coming into this season as maybe right there as the favorites to win the West with Alabama. It's something that the coaching staff's a little more happy to deal with those questions, but now that's the big question they're having to answer all the time.
Aubrey, last thing with you. Of that group of 9 early enrolls, we mentioned Cameron Clear. Are there any other guys, newcomers, to watch out of that group that's already in camp and a part of spring practice?
Yeah, there's two. The one's a linebacker. Sanders is going to be a guy that probably is in the mix right away because he's a really good athlete. But the big one is going to be Jaquay Williams. He's a wide receiver, originally out of Georgia. He went to prep school for a year, so now he's a true freshman, but he's had a year of prep school. And he's a guy that could step into a starting receiver role right away opposite Mike Evans. He's 6'3" or so. He's a really fast guy, really fluid guy with the ball. The question is, does he have good hands? And we haven't really seen that yet, but he's a guy that could step in right away.
All right. Well, Aubrey, really appreciate it. You can go to the 24/7 Sports Network and go to Texas A&M's team site there for more on Texas A&M and spring practice. You can also follow Aubrey on Twitter. It's at Aubrey Bloom 247 on Twitter or Gig'em 247.